Hello and welcome. And today's video is going to be a very beautiful success story. Do you know how some success stories are just very personal? They are very close to my heart and they are very close to your heart too. Because in that success story, we can all see ourselves. We can see that we were also a part of a similar situation. We can see how when this person has overcame these odds and when this person has worked on themselves to get to this place, then we can too. And this success story, when this happened, I was so personally happy. And in fact, I got an update about this story today. So hence I thought I would just make a video on this today. So I will explain the story in a step-by-step manner. I will explain how my client eventually, from a situation where she was a part of a very unhealthy relationship, to breaking up from that, to then manifesting love in general, to finding a person, to then having a relationship and then have it break away. For after then, for them to come back together and to now be engaged. This success story will have it all. I am also sure that I'm going to be posting a marriage success story soon, but I think that that is going to wait till the next year because she has mentioned to me that they're going to get married next year. Around 1 year from now, I will be posting that story, but till then, let's enjoy the story. I will explain from the start how I met this client, what eventually happened, and what her story was. I will also tell you exactly at what point I met this person and what are the exact things that we worked on. So I will first share a little bit of her story. This person, as she was growing up, so she's an Indian, but she's growing up outside. Now what happened and why this detail was important is because when her parents, so one of her parents, her mom, stayed in India and her father moved to a different place. I cannot name that place. Now as he moved there, she also moved with him. As this happened, this was a different culture for her. At this time my client was around 16 to 17. This was a different culture for her, this was a different area for her, and as they moved, her parents also got separated. So her parents also got separated. Now this is not easy, and this was not easy for her. And at this time, someone who was already very shy and timid, she got into her own shell. She hasn't, at this point, at least till now, she hasn't been in any relationships, and because of that she was struggling. She was a 16-year-old who was struggling at that time, trying to find her identity, trying to find who she was, trying to figure out her parents' separation and divorce, which eventually happened, and then trying to figure out how she fits in all of this. Also, as she was growing up, she struggled from confidence issues. And as she moved, because she moved to a different place, and at this time, because she was very introverted, not because she wanted to be, but because her insecurities told her that being an introvert is something that she can be, she started struggling a lot. Now, as she grew up, this is what her mindset became. She started being afraid of people. She started being afraid of talking to people. She was constantly anticipating rejection. Even before someone used to talk to her, she was constantly anticipating rejection. And a byproduct of this was she got very little male attention. And this was not because there was something wrong with her, but because she believed that there was something wrong with me, that she always limited herself. At a younger age, when guys used to reach out to her and tell her that she's pretty or they want to be with her, at this time she didn't used to believe them because she thought that if I was pretty, my parents would still be together. Now, to us, it might not feel logical, but to a child at that time, in that age, when they are going through something like this, they will always take it personally, because at this time, at this age, they are not able to question their families and they're not able to question their parents because their survival depends on them. So this is how she grew up. Now, as she grew up, she eventually got involved in very unhealthy, toxic relationships. Now, what was the reason that this happened and how did she eventually overcome that? So a big reason why this happened is because when we are growing up and we are coming from a lot of self-concept issues, a lot of self-esteem issues, even basic attention from men will start to feel amazing. So because previously when she used to get this attention from men, she used to reject it without even knowing. And then as she started growing up, when people started to reach out, she started to feel that a mere basic attention was something amazing. And in her mind, she started to pedestalize it. So if a guy would come into her life and show her that they are interested in her, at this time, even if these guys come with a lot of situations which are clear red flags, a lot of places where she should have clearly walked away, at this time in her mind, she thought that this is the only guy that can give me this love. And this is how she got into not one but two very unhealthy relationships. The first relationship was quick and it ended, but the second one was quite long. The second relationship lasted for around 4 years. And in these 4 years, she constantly struggled with this till the point where they were eventually going to get married. Now, by this time, she had struggled with physical abuse. I cannot name all the things here because it's a YouTube video, but she struggled with a lot. Now, when these things happened, eventually, by the time that she was about to get married to this person, somehow she gathered the courage. And yes, it is courage. It is a courageous decision to actually let go of all your insecurities, to actually fight against them, and to be able to stand and say no, even if I have invested 4 years of my life in this situation. When I am recognizing that it is not for me, I will walk away, which is what she did. And I'm really happy and proud of her for that. So, as she started to get better, this is where she met me. So, after she had gotten out of this situation, this is where she met me. And I'm talking about, this is, I think, 1.5 years back, even more probably. I don't remember the exact date. Now, when we first met, what we first worked on is a lot of forgiveness work. She was constantly blaming herself for settling in this relationship and in this situation for a while, even though she recognized that her trauma was the thing that was keeping her stuck there. And even though now she was taking responsibility of her life, and even though she was very courageous in walking away from this situation, her mind still blamed herself for everything that was going wrong in her life. And to a certain degree, even if consciously or unconsciously she took these actions, she was just suffering the consequences of them. And this is something we all go through, even if we are a victim of a situation. So here she was a victim of her conditioning. She didn't know what she was doing and why she was doing it. Even if that was the case, she was still doing it. And this is why a lot of times we have to balance between self blame and responsibility, because both can on the surface look the same. So, as she started working on herself, she started manifesting love in general. 3 months from there, she exactly found the guy that was in her list. And the list that we made was not a list of who this guy has to be. The list that we made was about who she wants to be and how can she become a version of herself that doesn't ever have to struggle with relationships anymore. As she became this version of herself, she found a guy who complemented that, and they got into a relationship. This is where our first coaching ended. So this is where we stopped working together. Now 6 months pass by and I don't hear from this client. I don't know what is exactly going on in her life. And here she reaches out to me again. Now this is where a lot of us get stuck, and this is where our journey needs self-concept work. So in these 6 months after we connected, she told me that this is what happened. So the first thing that happened is she told me that even if she had started to do better, she still needed support. But in that time, because she felt shame around taking support, a lot of people feel that when we are working on ourselves, and we have to take help of a coach, a therapist, a manifestation coach, and this happens with me all the time. I know people who clearly need help, but in that moment, because we are feeling shameful that, oh, I will need to take help for a relationship, we don't take the help that we need. And sometimes that keeps us stuck. This is something that when I first was working with these patterns for myself, and I was struggling in these areas, I also struggled to reach out to help. And at that time, we didn't have access to manifestation coaches. I started taking help from a therapist. At that time, that was the only source, someone who was able to deal with my feelings and help me with my feelings for me. And that is what she also was struggling with. So she was struggling with the shame of taking help. The second thing that happened is she told me that, Karan, my first instinct always became negative. I was constantly doubting this person. I was constantly asking him for reassurance. And this was in different ways. Sometimes I would tell him to call me 20 times a day. Sometimes, even when he was in a meeting, it was very difficult for me to believe that he was not cheating on me. So I constantly used to call him and tell him to video call me. Sometimes I would just show up outside of his house, not because I wanted to meet him, but because I was afraid that there was some other woman with him there. And these were the behaviors that she got herself involved in, and these were the things that she was struggling with. Now, as these things started to happen, at the start, the other person, the guy, the specific person in this scenario, was first at that moment accommodating. He also recognized that this girl is going through some trauma. See, he was also trying to help her to the best of his ability. But after a while, it became too much. And at that time, we cannot blame him. Every human being is eventually a human being, and human nature basically will always come in the middle of everything. Even if someone wants to help you to the best of your ability and to best of their ability, until and unless you take charge of it, they are not going to be able to do that. So at this time, this guy walked away from this relationship, and this is where she came to me. So the first thing happened is she acknowledged that these were the mistakes that I made. And I'm really happy that I'm able to come to you and tell you from this perspective of change. because earlier I would have just told myself that I did everything right and I wouldn't have accepted responsibility. But she also recognized that there were some things that this guy also has to work on. So even if she was feeling that guilt, she was able to recognize that in some places, this guy has to show up better for her. As we started working on herself, things started changing slowly. Now, what did we work on? So I did this one activity with her that I will recommend to all of you. And if you struggle with something like this can act as a form of revision that Neville Goddard used. Now, I'm not trying to have you change the past. I'm trying to have you understand that even in those moments you had control. So this is one activity that I gave her. And again, this is not for every person. This is for someone who is struggling in a similar situation. So absolutely try it. I told her to sit down and close her eyes. And I told her to imagine when she was getting these urges to sabotage this relationship. So she described one event to me. She told me that it was a Monday and I woke up. And at this time, this guy had already went off to office, like his work. And at this time, I was so worried that he is not in his office, even though he had told me that he is going to office, because usually they used to have an off on Monday afternoons, mornings, right? So even if he had told her that he is going to office, I did not believe him. I was constantly getting this urge and I called him around 18 to 20 times. She was feeling very ashamed with that. So this is where I told her to go back to feel how she's feeling and mentally imagine that she did not call him. As she did that, she started to realize that even in the midst of these feelings, she still had control. And she did this with multiple events where she recognized that she was the reason she was sabotaging this relationship. As this started to happen, she started to feel more and more in control of herself. After 2-3 months of no contact, this guy reached out. He texted her and said that, hey, let's meet and everything. So first she was very, very triggered. She was very worried that what will happen. Do you see how she didn't have to chase, didn't have to manipulate, didn't have to do anything to make him contact her? She only worked on herself, and not just for this guy, but because she recognized that if she doesn't work on herself, these patterns will keep on coming back in her life till the day that she dies. And she did not want that anymore. She wanted to be the best version of herself for herself. As she started working on this guy reached out. At this time, she was nervous. She thought that, you know what, if he reaches out, what if I'm not ready? So we worked with that panic, we worked with that anxiety, and eventually she went and met him. One date went to another, they started dating, and eventually they got into a committed relationship. The relationship kept on going, and eventually this guy has just recently asked for her hand in marriage, and they are practically engaged. Now, does this mean that when this person started working on herself, she didn't get any urges to sabotage? No, that does not mean that, because she definitely got these urges. She definitely felt all the negative feelings that she was feeling before. You know what helped her? First, it was having me for support, and these are her words, not mine. Sometimes having support helps, and this is me trying to tell you again so that the shame that we sometimes have when it comes to taking help should go away, because taking help sometimes is necessary. So one thing that helped her was having me around. Now, that doesn't mean she needs to have me around forever. It just means that as she's still working on herself and as she's slightly volatile in that topic, having help is absolutely helpful. The second thing that helped was her understanding and resetting what her expectations are. Earlier, she used to feel that I will never have these negative urges if I start working on myself and if I get into a relationship. That's not true at all. No matter how much you work on yourself, you will still get the urges to hurt the situation. You will still get the urges to sabotage. You will still get all these situations. How you deal with that is what matters. Once we start to expect that, you know what, resistance will come, I don't want it to, but if it comes, I have the tools to handle it. It really helps us get forward, because if resistance comes and we are surprised by its existence, then we are automatically going to be in a similar position as we were before. These are the things that helped her get to the place that she is. Now, am I certain that she will get to a better place? Yes. Why? Because she is very open, and she is very, very open to working on herself. There has not been one time where I have told her something that she needs to work on and she has been defensive towards it. You know why? Because this is how commitment shows in the physical world. Now, does that mean that sometimes people will get defensive and and that if they get defensive, they are always doing something wrong? No. Sometimes the defensiveness is because your body is trying to protect you, and that's okay. That is where having a firm intention that my goal is to change myself for me, not for anything else, will really be helpful. I hope you learned something from this video and that you're able to gather the courage to do the same things that she did to get her situation better. And I will see you guys in the next one.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe and share if you liked the video. The link for my one-on-one coaching, my self-help courses, and my free newsletter are in the description box below.